VIBErations podcast, part 25, Bey Logan. Hi, I'm Gary Brightman, and this is my bi-weekly podcast called VIBErations. Established in 2018, Vibe is a book and music shop situated in Moi Wo on Lantau Island in Hong Kong. So, what's been happening at the shop over the past couple of weeks? Having run 3 events in quick succession, last Saturday was a quieter one. The Vibe version 2 reboot work continues on. We've cleared out a large number of free books now, and we'll continue giving away more. The shelves are looking tidier, and the shop is getting easier to navigate through. We now stock Lantau prints from local photographer Michaela Tudor. I've also installed 2 record decks now, and a DJ switch to enable us to run DJ sets. Our next event will be an invitation-only 3rd anniversary party at Vibe. We have 2 bands on the bill, and we'll broadcast the 2 sets on Facebook Live on the 22nd of May from 2:30 p.m. onwards. Today I interviewed Angelica Cheng and Benny Birkenkotter, 2 university students who have set up an NGO called Caring Frontiers. That's caring spelt with a K. The purpose of Caring Frontiers is to provide fundraising for refugee Karen students in Myanmar. Vibe has donated to this very worthy cause by donating 2 goodie bags for prizes in their June raffle and sponsoring a student for 1 year via their website at caringfrontiers.com. Don't forget, caring is spelt with a K. This year, Caring Frontiers is aiming to raise 302,000 Hong Kong dollars to empower 534 students and 60 teaching staff among 5 different post-secondary schools located in refugee camps. Just 560 Hong Kong dollars is all it takes to sponsor 1 student for a whole academic year. And so, to this week's interview. Bey Logan is the most successful and prolific non-Chinese filmmaker in the Hong Kong and China movie industries. Over the last 3 decades, he has worked with and for the movie legends Jackie Chan, Chow Yun-fat, Gong Li, Sammo Hung and Jet Li. After relocating to Hong Kong from England, Logan worked for action superstar Jackie Chan, writing and producing the documentaries Jackie Chan, My Story and My Stunts, the films Gen X Cops and Gen Y Cops, and producing the smash hit The Twins Effect. Bey also wrote and produced the $60 million epic The Medallion starring Jackie Chan, which was filmed in Ireland and Thailand. In 2016, Bey wrote and produced the martial arts epic Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, Sword of Destiny. The film stars Donnie Yen, Michelle Yeoh and Veronica Ngo, and was shot on location in New Zealand. It was a hugely successful release worldwide on Netflix and theatrically in China. Bey was the producer on the critically acclaimed smash hit Vietnamese thriller Fury, the most successful Vietnamese film of all time, and the country's submission to the Academy Awards in the Best Foreign Language Film category. In 2020, Logan produced the martial arts thriller Furies, the action-packed follow-up to Fury, shooting on location in Vietnam. At the same time, he produced a History Channel documentary, Killing Bruce Lee, about the mysterious death of the late great Little Dragon. Bey Logan lives in Hong Kong, where he runs the Hung Gar Kung Fu School, the Kwai Fong Martial Club, and has published 5 books, including the best-selling Bruce Lee and I. He is the proud father of 5 Eurasian children and speaks English, Cantonese and French. Okay, so here I am in Kwai Fong Martial Arts Centre with no less Bey Logan.
Yep, glad to be here.
Thank you. And so, as we do, we'll start off with 10 questions.
Yes.
First question, what's your favourite book or author?
Well, my favourite author is definitely the American writer Cormac McCarthy. And my favourite books of his would be the Border Trilogy. And the reason is, I think, that I came to him, quite late in the day, but I find him to be an author who really has tapped into some vein of American Gothic. And certainly the way he writes is, as I'm moved into middle age and past middle age, the things he writes about, the subjects, really echo in my own life. And I thought the way it was extraordinary to me, having read as voraciously as I have, to come across an author who really redefines the English language, and I say that kind of as somebody who's read a lot of other great writers as well. But I found the Border trilogy was just an extraordinary piece. I wonder, I mean, because thankfully he's still with us, I think there's something about living authors who perhaps never quite get their due.
Yeah.
And I think that he still, perhaps, is not sufficiently recognized at the same level as Steinbeck or, you know, some of the great American writers who've come before, Scott Fitzgerald, people like that. And I think in time, hopefully in the years he has left, and then in later years, he will be recognized. But he's unquestionably my favorite author.
Favourite musical artist?
Well, my favourite musical artist is definitely Bruce Springsteen.
Oh, yes.
Somebody whose like work has breathed in the years of my own life, because I can very remember the first time I encountered him. We were on like a school trip to England. We were in a record store, and somebody picked up, and when I had like more hair and was skinnier, I looked like a bit like Bruce Springsteen on the cover of Born to Run.
Oh, yes.
And the guy picked up and says, "Hey, there's a guy here looks like you." So for a gag, I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to buy the album and tell people it's me.
Yeah.
Pick up chicks or whatever. So I brought that album back, and it's the famous cover with him and Clarence Clemens on front.
Yeah.
So then went home, and after looking at it for a few times, I thought, well, I bought the bloody thing. So I put the vinyl on, dun, 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 and it was just like, oh. And then it's so interesting because, I mean, the opening song is the title track, Born to Run.
Yeah.
And I've seen many interviews subsequently with Bruce Springsteen when he talks about the fact that in that song, the lyrics, there's a song like "Tramps Like Us, Baby, We Were Born to Run," which is how you feel when you're 19. And then there's "I Want to Know If Love Is Real," which is what you want to know as when you're 30 and older than 30.
Yes.
And I was fascinated going back, and he said, I never get bored singing these songs because they open up and they breathe in the ears.
Yeah.
And I find there's so many of his songs of which that's true, and I think he's just an extraordinary. I mean, we're lucky living I've lived through the times when there's been extraordinary songwriters working in the rock medium. We just talked about Elvis Costello before.
Yes.
Probably the great rock poet of our times.
Yeah.
I even go back to people like Roy Orbison, and I always kid with the boys. I just say because my two twin sons who are 19 are rappers now, and they're doing great music, but I always say to Ryan and the guys, listen to this, you guys are so unlucky, because I don't think the music today, pop music of today, matches up to what there was in yesteryear.
Yes.
So I'm kind of a big fan of retro rock records.
Yeah.
But Bruce Springsteen definitely leads the pack.
Yeah. Do you have a preferred drink?
Oh, absolutely. It would be coffee. I drink way too much coffee. Okay. It's strange. I mean, I always, I'll have a beer with the lads, and I'll drink wine with company. But left to my own devices, probably, I would just every few hours get a caffeine hit.
Right.
And it's been great in my lifetime. From in England growing up, when it was really just instant coffee.
Nescafe,
and the rise of like boutique coffee shops and Starbucks everywhere, and Pacific Coffee everywhere. And of course, you have in Moi War the lovely bakery. Is it the bakery?
Yeah, the bakery.
They have very nice coffee there, and so it's definitely would be coffee. And I probably drink too much of it.
Do you have a life motto?
It's very. It'd be so easy to be glib, but I thought if you're going to ask me a serious question, I'll give you a serious answer. Of my late years as I am now, I mean, I suppose the big thing that's kind of kept me on an even keel is this idea that we're not human beings having a spiritual experience. We're spiritual beings having a human experience, and if you kind of get too attached and too hung up on stuff, you can make life completely miserable for yourself and others. And it's this fine line. I mean, obviously personally, I'm a Buddhist, but you don't have to be any ism or ist. But it's basically life as a balance between attachment to the things that really are valuable but are transient, and letting go of stuff that's painful and unnecessary. So I think this is something much easier for spiritual beings to do rather than physical, corporal ones.
Do you have a favourite Hong Kong walk?
It's funny because it's in your neighbourhood. It would be around the waterfront at Moi War, including a stroll. Definitely drop by the Vibe bookstore.
Oh yes.
But I love that whole area. It's got. I don't know how we started going there. Well, actually, Elizabeth, my partner in crime, had used to go to the old Silvermine Hotel to write her novels, because she was a novelist before. So she used to go there to write years ago, when it was not as developed as it is now.
Yep.
And then we started coming on family getaways to Silvermine with the kids, and then different events. When I was having a difficult time in life, when I had to kind of like hide out for a while, I also went to Moi Wo. So it's a place that really embraces a lot of memories. My mom coming to visit, we stayed at the Hotel Silvermine, and I remember riding one of those. I think they've changed the rules, but at the time you could ride one of those pedicabs.
Yes.
It's like, I felt like Sammo Hung in Pedicab Driver. And I was riding along with my mom in the back.
Yes. Do you have a favourite Hong Kong restaurant?
It would be the Solimia restaurant in Soho, and the reason is because they serve excellent Italian cuisine, but also it's been kind of the go-to place. I think I actually proposed or began my relationship with she who would become my second wife in their old location. They moved to the new one, but we've had birthdays and my mum coming to town, and we always go there. So it's a combination of the friendship we have with the owners, the actual cuisine, and also the fact that we've got so many happy memories about Solimio.
Faced with a python whilst walking up to the peak, what would you do?
I would immediately whip out my phone and from a distance shoot as many photographs from as many angles. I put my hand in the shot, my head in the shot.
Yes.
I would do as many photographs as possible to show how brave I was, and then I would run away at great speed. So it would be a combination of photos for bragging rights, followed by sheer panicked flight.
What's the best advice you were ever given?
Well, I think it was somebody quoting somebody else, but it was 90% of success or succeeding is just showing up. And this is something that definitely just being there, showing up. I mean, there's kind of a corollary to that: prepared to work, having done your homework with the right mental, emotional attitude. But if you're not there, and this is something I think that's become increasingly a problem in the distanced social media age, of the sense that you don't physically have to be anywhere, that you're digitally present. And I'm not a great believer in that. I really believe that, and it's one of the reasons that we maintain this space here in Kwai Fong, which is like a multimedia, multicultural center, where people can actually come and work and cooperate and create together. I think that's a very important thing. And I wouldn't say any of my life-changing or greatly rewarding experiences have been online. They've all been interpersonal. So I think, and when I talk to people, I always say, well, if you just, like me when I wanted to come and make films in Hong Kong, there's a lot to be said for just showing up and not leaving. And I actually don't think I know anybody who showed up, worked really hard, and refused to quit, who completely failed.
Finish this sentence. I live in Hong Kong because...
Well, I live in Hong Kong because whoever you are, it allows you to become that which you are prepared to work for.
Yes.
And I've seen that definitely in my own case, where I was this kind of like the son of an accountant and a nurse in Peterborough, England. And they said, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I said, I want to go to Hong Kong and make Kung Fu movies. And the look on their faces is like if my son said he wanted to be an accountant, I'd be like, you want to do what? So, but the fact is that Hong Kong is a place where you show up. And what I like, it's very digital and binary, in that you come in and it's like somebody says, oh, so you're saying you can do this? Show me. And you've got endless examples of people who, like myself, have come in with really extraordinary ambition, but they've been prepared to work and they had a certain innate ability, and they were allowed to become that.
Right.
You also have people who crash and burn because this city has no tolerance for people who are full of it. And if you can't deliver, if you can't make money for somebody, if you can't create for somebody, you get kicked to the curb really quick. I don't have trouble with that. Like, particularly in my own area, I always say it's not called tell business, it's called show business. You've got to show, and there's too much telling. There's too much yabba yabba online and twittering and chitting and chatting. It's like, no, it's like you if you're working in film, if you're working in music, if you're working in the written media, if you're writing books, you have to show people your work and share it. Otherwise, what's the point? Hong Kong has been, I think, still is a place where if you come in and you say, I have an ambition of something I want to do, I'm prepared to work all the hours God gives, and I'm going to be, and I'll apply everything I have, and I'll be as smart as I can be. Hong Kong is an unusual place because there's certainly other cities where there are limitations in terms of your education background, your ethnicity, your class, whatever, that still exists to this day.
Yeah.
And here I've never felt any of that. I felt that if you came in as a white guy who became a successful Hong Kong film producer making Chinese movies, I think I'm like the poster boy for that.
Yes.
And I think it's true across the board. What's changed over the last years that I've been here, and it's certainly true in the arts, is we don't have the sense of community that we once had, and I think that's a shame. And that's something, again, I'm trying to foster. So anybody hearing this who wants to, obviously you get my contacts at the end, who wants to reach out and use the space or be involved with our extended creative community, we really welcome it. But I think what social media has done is actually push people apart when it's like, well, we'll Zoom together, or we'll talk, obviously COVID has a role to play in that, but otherwise it's the trend. It's I'll text you, or I'll Zoom with you, or I'll FaceTime with you, not so much showing up and actually being part of a community.
I think we're moving into a period, it's time to reconnect, isn't it? Human beings again. Do you have a favourite area of Hong Kong?
Well, it's boring for you, I guess. It's Mui Wo and
Not
the rest
boring.
of Lantau, which you walk religiously every Sunday. I know for a fact, because every time I come to the store, you're out walking the hills. But good for you. But no, I do definitely find that to be a really pleasant area with a lot of happy memories, and it hasn't been as yet overly spoiled or built up or kind of like constructed in a different way. I mean, I've looked around me, and sadly, so many of the touchstones of the cultural past of Hong Kong have gone. I'm not quite sure how and this is I've said what I think is great about Hong Kong. What I think is a shame is the lack of reverence for the past and lack of a sense that we preserve popular culture. I mean, I'm not talking about teacups or Chinese opera or Sun Yat-sen. I'm talking about film culture, Chinese martial arts, the things that have put Hong Kong on the map globally. I mean, we've got this exhibition which I contributed to at the Sharton Cultural Museum of Bruce Lee, but there should be a permanent Bruce Lee museum, a permanent museum of Southern Chinese martial culture. The nearest thing we have is this. Which is it should be paid for by the government, but it's paid for by this sucker. But that's what's needed more, is a reverence and an appreciation of our culture, which is disappearing fast.
Did Bruce Lee ever film on Lantau?
Not as an adult. I would have to go through his childhood films, because he did a bunch of black and white childhood films, not all of which are extant or easy to see, and even I don't think I've seen every frame of every one. I would think it's likely as a child he maybe filmed that, because there was a lot of shooting. The more unspoilt and overgrown an area was, the more likely you were to go and film there. Like the old black and white Wong Fei Hung films, they would shoot there. But I think he probably did it as a child, but not as an adult.
Okay.
Sorry to disappoint you.
Well, maybe it's a task.
I'm going to come in. Actually, we're going to be doing. We're developing a film at the moment. Maybe I shouldn't say what it's exactly about, because it's going to spoil it, or maybe it will get beaten to the punch. But it would be set on Lantau. And it would be more of a. Remember Mike Lee, the British director?
Yes, Mike Lee. Yes,
kind of like improvisational. Something more like very different for me or us. So that's going to be fun.
Okay. Why did you come to Hong Kong in the first place, and when was that?
Well, it was about, looking back, it's about 30 years ago. And it was really, I had three ambitions, all of which were happily fulfilled. When I was growing up in England, in Peterborough, I really felt I was living this monochrome, black and white life, and I just felt I was in the wrong place at the wrong time with the wrong people. And I would watch, the first time I saw something, I guess it's like somebody who heard other kinds of music and they heard jazz and they go, that's my thing. Right? Or whatever it was. For me, it was just like the first time I saw Kung Fu, which was, for all of us of my generation, was kind of in a movie, because there wasn't really anybody doing Kung Fu on the streets. So you'd see it in a movie and you go, what is that? That's what I want to do. That's what I want to do with my life. That's what I want to learn. That's what I want to be involved with. And so I was, where do they do that? Hong Kong. So you look on the map and it's like, okay, that's where Bruce Lee's from, who was the first guy who really put it on, made us aware of this. So it was like, I want to learn Kung Fu, I want to, in some way, be involved with making Hong Kong films, and I wanted to marry Susie Wong.
Oh, yeah, who
or
wouldn't?
The modern equivalent. So, and years later, actually, there was a documentary a friend of mine did about Nancy Kwan.
Yes,
and I was
know
interviewed for that, and I actually said, that was part of my motivation, was I looked at that film and went, I want to be like William Holden, the writer who moves and meets Nancy Kwan.
Yes.
So it was really those three kind of like motivations, and I consider it a great blessing of my life that the dreams of my youth came true. And if I went back and said to my 20-year-old self, like, guess what? You did make films with Jackie Chan. You did have a kung fu school, and you did meet, the modern version of Susie Wong. I would be like, really? It's all good. So I sometimes think, like, it's kind of it's interesting to compare, the guy who was like, wanted to be an astronaut and ended up being like a quantity surveyor.
Yes,
and in my case, it was the other way. But that was what brought me here, and so far so good. Yeah.
So that would have been around the sort of, I mean, you probably would have seen a Bruce
93.
Lee film at the cinema, sort of mid-70s.
I was old enough to see
Enter the Dragon,
Bruce Lee movies in their heavily censored version in the theatres in Hong Kong, in England.
Yeah, me too.
And was kind of like, wow, this is, I mean, I think, there were two transformative, kind of moments. One is watching Bruce Lee for the first time.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us look at Bruce Lee and you admire him and you idolize him, but none of us really think you can become like Bruce Lee. Even Chinese people can't. It isn't not about race. You cannot. Bruce Lee was like an unattainable, and I thought year by year that it would fade to become kind of a remote cult thing.
Yeah.
But instead, year by year, Bruce has become ever more potent as a cultural icon. And I just finished producing a documentary about him for History Channel, and there's already been another documentary done by ESPN just a year ago. So it's like there's more and more. And I've written a book. Thank you, Gary, for selling it. Bruce Lee and I. I still like to maybe do another documentary about him. There's still more work to be done. The other thing that really kind of like turned me on to Chinese martial culture was the old Kung Fu TV series with David Carradine.
Oh yeah, I loved it.
There was so many concepts. Like now it's probably dismissed as being, he was a white guy. Well, the character was Eurasian, so you're either going to hire a Chinese guy and pretend he was half. It's unlikely you could find a Eurasian actor. There are very few Eurasian actors in Hollywood at that time.
Yeah.
So you're either going to get a Chinese guy and pretend he was half white, or a white guy and pretend he was half Chinese.
Yes.
So I always felt that was a fallacious argument.
Yeah, it was.
And the character himself had such integrity.
Yes.
And there were so many things that you saw in that series that now are so, pervasive, like Shaolin Temple is the birthplace of Kung Fu. The tiger, the crane, the snake, all those styles.
Yes.
All those things. And this kind of Buddhist philosophy. For somebody watching television in England on a Wednesday night, it was like, what?
Yeah.
So both of those really, and actually I have a plan to do a book. I wish there were 25 hours to the day, but I want to do a book about the old Kung Fu TV series and its influence and culture and different aspects of it.
I would buy that.
In later life, I became quite good friends with David Carradine, so I also share some of my experiences with him.
He was a hero, wasn't he?
He was an amazing character. He did not disappoint, I can tell you, in person, I already had one relatively successful career in Hong Kong, in England, as a film magazine writer and editor.
Okay.
Initially with a martial art magazine, and later with a film magazine.
That's
and then use that as a calling card, because if you actually said to people, I would like to sit down and talk to you for 2 hours about filmmaking, I mean, I'll do that, but I mean, back in the day, people were not open to it. But then if you said, well, I want to talk to you about, that's how I became friends with Donnie Yen, Yip Man of today, I think if I would have said, I want to hang out with you, he would have been like, not interested, understandably.
Yeah.
But saying, I'll interview you and I'll put you on the cover of my magazine, that was a great calling card. So I don't think I perceived it that way at the time, but I almost feel I feel that was the first stage towards working in film, was doing the magazines.
Right.
So I did that, and then I think I was at 30, pushing 30 when I came, and already had that career. And then, as I said earlier, what I love about Hong Kong, you can reinvent yourself. I really got off the plane and said, I am now a film producer.
Yeah.
But I was prepared to put the hard graft in. Yeah. I would think of myself as being a writer, because I think every field I'm involved with involves a certain amount of writing, and then an author of books, a couple of which Bruce Lee and I, and the first volume of 36 Chambers of Kung Fu Cinema are available now at Vibe.
Indeed.
I've been a film producer for most of the time that I've been in Hong Kong, and now I'm a Kung Fu school owner, and we're sitting here in the rapturous surroundings of the Kwai Fong Martial Club. And also, I guess I've become a Hong Kong cinema historian. I mean, if you actually are part of a cultural phenomenon and you refuse to die, you become a historian.
Yes, that's true.
Because you know where all the bodies are buried. So, I mean, that became... But also, I wrote the volume 1 of 36 Chambers, and I actually written volume 2. It's very interesting, and this is, I think, is a blessing for all of us. Gary, you and I, both bibliophiles, was the fact that when I started writing books, I thought, well, I kind of missed the boat here, because everything has moved into a digital format. So everybody's films are being shared, music is being shared. No one's going to want to pick up a physical book and flick through the pages. It's all going to be Kindle, it's all going to be e-copy. Well, I don't know about in broad strokes, but in my world, no one wants that. They just want the book. Yes. So we did, Bruce Lee and I sold exceptionally well. 36 Chambers has done okay. And there's all these people demanding that we do the print version of 36 Chambers too. And I go, but I've got an e-copy. I don't care. Yes. I want you to print the damn thing. Yeah. And I'm working, most of the way through my second book, Jackie Chan and I. Yes. About Jackie's films and also my experiences working with Jackie. Yeah. And so that also, everybody says, when's it coming out? And they don't want to hear about an e-version. They want it to be printed. Right. So more trees must die. Yes. But my books must live. For a good cause, I would say. Yeah, well, thank you for saying that. But anyway, that's been interesting, and it gave me a lot of hope, because I love books, and I always feel like, well, I'm the last generation. And I didn't think vinyl would come back. No, none of us did. The way it has, really. But vinyl and books and all the things that make my life worth living, and even actually, you wouldn't believe it in the day of Netflix, but collector's editions, Blu-rays are a big thing now. Are they? Yeah, no, they bring out a lot of the Hong Kong films with bonus features, and it's fantastic, and it's been great for me in terms of researching my book. I kind of not as interested. I used to do a lot of bonus feature materials for Blu-rays and DVDs. Yeah. And now I'm thinking it's much more, for me anyway, I'd rather spend the time putting the information into a book that's going to be some kind of, has a solidity to it. Yeah, I do think the other things are kind of temporary. Yeah. How's COVID affected me? Yes. Less than most, because I thought that, like everybody, particularly in my field, going, well, no one's going to see movies. No one can make a movie. I'm just going to sit and write my book and do Kung Fu for 12 months. But as it turned out, 2020 into 2021 was incredibly busy. I went to Vietnam, to Saigon, to make a film called Furies. And the time I was there, Saigon had COVID very much under control. Yes. So I flew from Hong Kong. We had to get a special dispensation from the government that I could go in the country. Did my 2 weeks of quarantine, which was, interesting. And then made the film for the month that I did that, and then came back, and then 21 days of quarantine again. But I was simultaneously doing the Bruce Lee documentary, and then moved on to physically produce the rest of that in Hong Kong. So it was a fairly intense period. Right. And I would say the only big change for me was the amount of time I was in quarantine. You mentioned the Bruce Lee documentary earlier that you'd worked on. Is there a way we can see that now? Is it going to be on History Channel? Release? On the History Channel. Yes, it's going to be. The great thing about the thing about film is, Furies is finished, but I think that will be out the end of the year. Right. Whereas with the documentary, I believe History Channel will have it out in really short order, because television gets turned around really fast, which is great. So it'll be on History Channel. They're actually running the trailers now. It's History's Greatest Mysteries, and they're running the trailers now, presented by Lawrence Fishburne. Yeah. I think they lead off with Titanic. Right. And we're like number 4 or 5. Okay. So it'll be up shortly. Let me know what you think. Yes, big time. Yeah. Will do. Well, I'll like it regardless. Sure. You'll be nice about it. No, but I'm optimistic, cautiously optimistic. I think it'll be excellent. So, just in terms of what you're doing now, here we are in Kwai Fong Martial Arts Centre. Sure. If people want to get here and do things, what sort of things can people do here? Well, I think we're the only kind of, I would say, cross-media cultural centre focusing really on Southern Chinese martial art, but I don't want to limit it to that, but it just reflects my interest for Kung Fu and movies. Yes. But I'm open to people coming and being involved with music and painting and photography and whatever they want to do. It's a 3,000 square foot space in Kwai Fong, and I'll obviously leave my contacts later, and people can reach out to me and just come and check out the place. And the way we work is that if you want to rent it for a commercial enterprise, we work something out. If it's a purely labor of love creative thing, they can have it for free. And if it's something that may one day make money, they can give me a cut of whatever they eventually make. But I do think, a life of service and providing a service is rewarding in the long term. Yeah. So I definitely have no problem with providing a service with the space. And I think now what we do at every bi-weekly, we have a Hong Kong Kung Fu culture evening. We show movie clips, we have Kung Fu demonstrations, talk about film history, martial art history, to share that with people. We had the first one of those last week. And then we have different classes and different martial arts every night of the week. We're kind of like, you can come and buy our movie memorabilia, because I've got all of the existing memorabilia from the old Golden Harvest studios, including all the Bruce Lee stuff.
Yeah.
So we sell that on www.realeast.com, REELEAST.com. That's www.realeast.com, real REEL. And you can find all the materials there. And if you're in Hong Kong and you need to enliven your wall with a Bruce Lee poster or a wonderful artistic, you've seen them in the other room.
Fabulous. I would just say, sitting here, this place is inspiring. You're surrounded, the walls are covered in books and martial arts posters.
Half your stock
and
is here.
Most of my stock from the shop. How did that get there?
There's a fair few.
It is such a very cool space. I can imagine films being made here.
Right.
You can spoof all sorts of offices and gymnasiums and everything. And that Bruce Lee memorabilia. It gets me right there. It's fantastic stuff.
It was going to be
original.
If I had not taken it on, it was going to be thrown away.
It's mad.
And it was they would never have admitted it, but that's what would have happened to it. So I had to back up a couple of trucks and been keeping it since then. But what's been fascinating to me is the fact that I thought, I didn't want it to be destroyed, but I also thought maybe I'm the only one. But what I found is that not just for the Bruce Lee, but people are fascinated, and they want to, particularly if you're if you're living in Hong Kong a long time, they like posters like, for example, Warriors 2 is a beautiful artwork poster, and you want to put it on your wall as a statement piece. That's become something. So I'm really glad that I can give that back to the community, because otherwise, there would be a few copies floating on eBay, but not the volume that we have. And of course, in the store and Vibe, you've got some of the Fist of Fury flyers and
yes, we have. And I'd like to say I'm here today to hopefully pick up some more stock for us to sell in Vibe.
Yes.
So posters, picture cards, Bruce Lee memorabilia.
The only thing wrong with you is you're not a Time Lord. Because if Vibe was bigger on the inside than the outside, like the TARDIS, it would be perfect. But it's pretty damn good as it is.
As far as you know, I'm not a Time Lord.
Yeah, that's true.
So I wouldn't tell you if I was.
Indeed.
Maybe.
Yes. Every day I feel like I'm a plate spinner at the circus. Every day I come in and I'm working on developing new visual content, whether it's producing, writing films, documentaries, and then Kung Fu classes, writing books, and just basically that's my contribution, but at the same time being really open to other people to come in and collaborate. You end up being in your tribe and in your groove. And I think I do know all the movie and martial art people, but I feel that your outreach with Vibe would be a lot of different. I've already met some interesting people through your introduction, that maybe there's people who could use the space or collaborate with me in some way, shape and form. It's remarkable in Hong Kong history that such a small place has actually been the center for one sphere of filmmaking, but actually it's been the center of three, because you had the indigenous Hong Kong Cantonese movies being made, which is where I worked for most of my career. Shaw Brothers, Golden Harvest, and those independent companies. I worked primarily in Hong Kong films for the time that I've been here. Then you have foreign movies coming to shoot in Hong Kong. So your Batmans, your Transformers. And then you have these little quirky indie films that people make, like yourself. And I think nobody in the Hong Kong industry knows about the quirky indie film industry, and the foreign filmmakers tend to come having a very vague knowledge of who the Hong Kong filmmakers are. But within this tiny space, you've got these three spinning wheels. So I suppose I've been a kind of a connecting factor in that when I've had the opportunity to do either local films or even international films like Crouching Tiger, there's been a sense of who have I seen do something really cool locally, like a low budget movie of their own, who would like to make the jump across to work in the mainstream.
Yes.
And I always think it's like a firewall, and like you're here, and on the other side of it is the film industry, the music industry, the whatever.
Yes.
In the creative arts, and there's like an industry and a business.
Yeah.
And how do you get in there? And I think it's like, you know, the Spike Lee thing, you know, by any means necessary, you have to get over that wall and get in the industry. So to me, to some extent, would reach out to people and find an opportunity to get people from those other spheres to come and work on projects that we're doing.
You know, Hong Kong itself is a film set, really, isn't it? You know, you turn a corner in Hong Kong and you...
I still don't think... it's ironic in a way, because it tends to be where overseas filmmakers come to make their worst movie. Like, you know, that Vietnamese director did I Come With the Rain. It's his worst film. He also made Norwegian Wood, which is good, right? And Scent of Green Papayas and Ciclo, these classic movies. And then he did I Come With the Rain in Hong Kong. Michael Mann, he did Black Hat, his worst film. So I look at it and go, the great internationally produced Hong Kong movie has yet to be made. I mean, I don't know if I can be counted anymore as a foreign filmmaker. Maybe I'll make it, but I still don't think it's been really fully realized as a location to make films. And I agree with you 100%. The nearest, it was a major inspiration for Blade Runner. Though none of Blade Runner was filmed here. But that probably, to me, ironically, the most genuinely Hong Kong movie was Blade Runner. Even though it was not filmed here.
One of the greatest
Ridley
films,
Scott had shot a commercial here
made.
And caught the vibe of the place. And I think that's probably the most, ironically, the most genuine Hong Kong flick.
I think it really did inspire that. I agree. So, Bey, what are you going to do next?
Well, I think I did the last Hong Kong martial art movie, which was Lady Blood Fight, which is a couple of years ago. It was not intended to be the last martial art movie, but it's been the last till now. So I'd like to do another one. I'd like to do a film bringing traditional Chinese martial arts somehow into the modern world in a realistic way. I'm not quite sure how to do that, but that's an idea. I worked on this, we've done 2 of these films so far. Fury, the first one, was a Vietnamese film, kind of a Vietnamese version of Taken, and it became the most successful Vietnamese film ever, and it was nominated, it was their film they nominated for the Oscars, so I always say a Oscar-nominated producer, but that's not actually true. It was basically every country nominates one of their And Fury, it's unusual because it's an action film, right? But it was nominated by Vietnam, which I thought was great, and the film was hugely successful. So we did Fury, and then just finished Furies. So it was like Alien and Aliens, right?
Gotcha.
Fury,
See
Furies,
what you're doing,
right? So we're doing that, and then I'm developing at the moment. I want to do Fury 2, which I hope we can do in Hong Kong, which would be great. But it's very early stages. I'd like to do another... I just did, like, I guess, the Death of Bruce Lee documentary. So I'd like to go back upriver, and I think there's enough material, stuff we didn't use, because what we wanted to do in this one was, the great history is a great mystery, was examine the circumstances of Bruce Lee's death. And then I think the stuff we didn't use or pursue, because it wasn't relevant to that, brief. And I think it'd be good to go upriver and do Bruce Lee's life. And I haven't done one of those yet. So those are the immediate projects, and then developing other stuff with other members of the team.
So just a couple of things that are important. How do people get in touch with you if they want to use this fabulous space?
Well, I'm not at all proud, and anybody who wants to ask questions or come and check out the school, or harangue me in any which way, you can reach me on my phone and WhatsApp, which is Hong Kong 852 93749619 93749619. All are welcome. And my email is Bey, B-E-Y, at reeleast, REELEAST.com. So on either format, I'm really open to people approaching in any which way. Every Saturday we have a Zoom webinar. We've been using after all my ranting about social media, we are using it. We have a Zoom webinar every Saturday where my teacher teaches a form, and we have Zoom classes. One of the things I think that we always want to turn poison into nectar. The bad times of COVID, one thing that happened was at the beginning of the process, Elizabeth, my partner in crime, said, well, no one's going to be coming in to train because this is the situation and these are the limitations. So what we need to do now is Sifu needs to be teaching private classes and group webinars, and I'm like, nobody is going to want that. No, I was wrong. People were stuck at home going, I've always wanted to do Kung Fu, and now's my chance. And so it's been fantastically successful, and now I think it's a business and a model that will outlive the plague years.
Yeah.
We'll keep doing it.
Yeah, okay. The next
it's quite an
wave.
undertaking. Yeah. So we do those you can find the ones we've done so far, edited and available on release.com, and then the new ones are updated every week.
Bey Logan, thank you very much.
Thank you for coming, mate.
Cheers.
Appreciate it. Cheers.
You can listen to all our podcasts published at SoundCloud under Gaz, or on YouTube under Live at Vibe HK, or following the links from my website at vibehk.com. Finally, a reminder that Vibe is open 7 days a week, every day of the year, from 12 noon until approximately 6:30 p.m. Well, that's it for another week. Thanks for listening to the 25th Vibe Book and Music Shop podcast called VIBErations. I'm Gary Brightman. You get my vibe?
Can you imagine what this old island must have looked like to those Dutch sailors when they first saw it? Fresh green. Like a dream of a new world.
They must have held their breath. Afraid it would disappear before they could touch it.